Support the channel on patreon.com/manlightfoot.
It's interesting to think about the year Sonic the Hedgehog has had, isn't it? There are a few game franchises that are able to have a good year, lest we forget the year of Luigi, but usually that all stems from the game aspects. For Sonic, his year in games was pretty good. Sure, there was a somewhat rough spot with Sonic Origins, which isn't as strong as, say, the Sonic Mega Collection that came before it, but it works as a good means to play the original games in HD. Then you have Sonic Frontiers, which absolutely was a great showing from Sonic Team that they're finally taking Sonic seriously. Sure, it has some rough spots, that Pinball Park can eat a fat one, but it clearly made a point that they're gonna push to make quality Sonic games again. There's a great framework for them to build from that the boost games didn't lend themselves. The open zone and combat mechanics can easily be improved upon with each new game, so here's to hoping. But it doesn't stop at the games. Of course, you have the comics, which were consistently hitting a good high in their quality, especially with getting to their 50th issue this year. Also introducing Surge and Kit, who became fan favorites. Then on the movie front, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 ended up proving to be the best live-action video game adaptation. A great sense of characterization that fans have been wanting to see in the games went a long way for it, as well as a fun story that plays to the spirit of Sonic. It just goes to show playing to fans can work out for you, as long as it plays to the right fans and not the Rule 34 fans. Y'all know who y'all are.
Oh, you nasty.
This year has proven to be Sonic's, which culminated in what the fan base has dubbed the Sonic Sweep, and that makes perfect sense to call it that. Nobody else in gaming has been hitting this type of stride, but there's still one show that closes this sweep out on a very strong note. That being the highly anticipated Sonic Prime, a new Sonic animated series that lives up to its hype. It's different from the most recent Sonic series, with it being more focused on telling an actual full narrative rather than just being an epic Sonic comedy show, though Sonic Boom definitely had some gems for its jokes.
This must be what birds feel like! Look at me! I'm a penguin!
Meteors are shooting stars. We shouldn't be running. We should be making wishes. I wish for a pony.
And I wish you'd take cover.
How come your wish came true?
You know, Amy, anytime someone calls attention to the breaking of gender roles, it ultimately undermines the concept of gender equality by implying that this is an exception and not the status quo.
Himbo Knuckles was certainly a treasure. Sonic Prime did many things that I believe makes it the perfect way to round out the year for the Sonic franchise. So let's take a look at how Sonic Prime is the perfect swan song to the Sonic Sweep. And it's also the best Sonic series. With Sonic Prime, there's a clear wonder as to whether it can stand on its own among the great Sonic animated media that came before it. I mean, sure, some of those pieces of media had some things about them that are a bit of a blemish.
What? What? Whoa! Whoa!
No! Don't look there, you pervert!
You're doing this! You're the one who's making time come to a stop!
Who, me?
It's a trick to make them send Sonic back to his world! It won't work! I'll make you tell everybody the truth!
Chris happened, and we let him happen. But there's still the greats like Sonic Sat AM, Sonic Boom, and even Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog that Prime has something to live up to in terms of a legacy. To be real, it's able to stand above all those shows pretty easily. It managed to be an all-encompassing series that incorporates almost every aspect of its predecessors, save for the singing of Sonic Underground, but let's be honest, there's no topping this banger. The one thing people tend to love about Sonic series is how the characters are portrayed, and here they do things in a more unique way. The main setup is that following an incident involving Sonic and the gang and the Eggman fighting over this stone called the Paradox Prism, Sonic gets flung into alternate realities where he never existed. There's a lot that the show can explore, but we've only been given 8 episodes in this batch for now, so we can only go off of what's been given to us so far. But with what they do, there's some good character work here. Sonic acts just about how you would expect with him being a loving guy who's all about doing the right thing. He cracks jokes, he kicks the buttocks, and all that smooth jazz. It feels like pure Sonic, invoking a little Saturday morning cartoon vibes. You know, without invoking Saturday morning cartoon vibes, if you know what I mean.
Hey! I've been looking for you, Baldy McNosehair!
Those days are behind us, thankfully. Nice thing is that they let that arrogant side of Sonic out that's been missing for some time, save for the comics. He's also just a plain goofball. Like, clearly he loves having fun, but it can cloud his judgment at times. He feels like a nice mixture of every iteration of Sonic from all sorts of media. It is nice to see him have flaws again that can have consequences, and we see it play out. They also do something that we've been wanting from Sonic for a minute, and that's having him connect with his friends. Of course, in this series, these versions of his friends have never met him, so he basically has to reconnect with them, but that brings me to how the gang is characterized in each dimension. Now, there's multiple dimensions that Sonic goes to where all his friends have different iterations, so I'll only go over the more prominent ones, because otherwise we'll be here all day. We get a version of Tails who basically didn't have Sonic there to help him out when he was getting picked on when he was younger. A different take on Tails' official origin from the original games. In this Eggman-ruled dimension, Tails, or as they refer to him as 9, became a lone wolf, or fox in this case, who doesn't trust anyone, not even the resistance made up of Knuckles and Rouge and the other citizens. We see he's a lot more unkind and harsh to people, but also he's pretty much a badass.
That's brutal.
Come on, man, that's just cool. With Sonic not being there for his upbringing, he didn't have that moral role model to help guide him through things. He just fights for himself.
I take care of myself and need no one. Period. Why do you think I live down here? To avoid everyone. You included.
This plays on the idea of who these characters are without Sonic and what they do in dire situations. That's honestly all the dimensions that we get to see, since the ones we're shown so far have all been sort of apocalyptic. Amy even gets a major change in this jungle dimension. Here she's named Thorn Rose, and she just loves the environment so much that she would do anything to keep it safe, including kicking out her friends to keep them from over-farming from it. To be honest, you would completely understand her motivation since her friends were going nuts with how much they were taking from the jungle.
Now I can barely remember a time when we all got along. Sharing the spoils of the jungle, taking only what we needed to survive.
I'm pretty sure even a major polluter would think that's just plain wasteful. But what's really nice is how this brings back the environmental message Sonic has been known for. We haven't really had too much of that since maybe Sonic Colors, and in terms of animated shows, Sonic Sat AM. It brings in the idea that it's not okay to just take from the world and never give back. And also for Amy, this plays on her love of the world, which we saw in Frontiers, and how she wants to always protect it. But the thing about this version is how she didn't have Sonic there to help mediate how far she'll go to show her love for the world. She went pretty far in trying to protect the environment that it started to die since there was no sunlight getting through, also causing starvation for everyone. They make it clear that Thorn wasn't right for kicking everyone out and letting nature get out of hand. The message isn't just a plain black and white joint. Then you got Knuckles, who's a pirate in this dimension, as well as everybody else. Now, his story is a bit more small time, and it's possible it might get explored more later, but more or less it revolves around him losing his glory after a failed treasure hunt that resulted in some of his crew leaving him, and even bullying him afterwards. Imagine getting bullied by the jobbers. That's a pretty sad life at that point. He wants to regain his glory, but sadly he lost all hope for himself and just stays on the ship partying. But a thing with each of these different iterations is that they all have Sonic come in to motivate them to do the right thing. Basically, he's the through line for all of them to be better than what they are. Without him, they all fall to the worst aspects of the world, or even themselves. Rouge sadly doesn't get an iteration that gets an arc, at least not in this batch of episodes, but she at least gets some nice characterization that's different from her more, sensual version. Let's face it, she was definitely some kid's awakening at some point. They knew what they were doing with those outfits, but I digress. They do have her iterations taking up more of a leadership role in some of the dimensions. Definitely not something you'd expect, but I think it works with how they have her. If anything, I wouldn't be mad if they used this version of her more in the games or comics in some way. It'd be nice to see her taking on more of a leader role amongst the gang. She's just always been more of an aloof type of character who's just kind of off doing her own thing or sometimes even betraying the gang, but I kind of like that they add her as part of the group and helping out in some way, shape, or form. There's also Shadow, who we don't get that much of, but he's still able to leave somewhat of an impression, especially with how he deals with Sonic.
So, I know what you're thinking.
You got knocked the fuck out, man!
It leads to a really cool moment that I'll get into later. Now we come to Eggman, who gets a whole council of himself in the dimension he took over, all being different versions of himself in time. Think the Council of Mandarks in the Dexter Ego Trip movie. They all act as a sort of version of Eggman from infancy to old age. It is interesting to see them play off each other, but they're not bumbling idiots. They show why they're a threat to take serious. They even roboticize Amy, granted of her own free will, as she states, which is pretty dark when you think about it. Amy actually gave up and just let herself fall to the Eggman regime. It's even crazier to think that they bring back the Eggman taking over the world plotline from SatAM, the Archie comics, and even Sonic Forces game, but you know, good like the former. It speaks to how important Sonic really is in his world, because everything falls apart without him. What's a bit surprising about the characterization and why it's done so well is they have Ian Flynn, a major writer for the Archie and IDW comics, on board as a consultant. It makes perfect sense that they were able to get everything so right on this front. I was constantly thinking, this feels like it's the comics but brought to life. He's pretty much known for breaking down what works about the characters, and then you have these writers who definitely knew their stuff when it comes to Sonic. Combined with all these efforts, you get some masterful character work. It is honestly amazing how they're able to get this so well done and breaking down the characters in such a unique way. The amazing characterization of everyone is made complete with the great performances from the actors. Everyone just sounds perfect. Hell, the actor for Sonic, Devin Mack, takes things back to the 90s with him being a black man. It's crazy how they either purposely or non-purposely do all these throwbacks, but what works well about this series is how they wrap everything into a nice animated bow without feeling heavy-handed with its references. Wait, I realize it might be a bit awkward now to cut to a mid-break without smoothly transitioning. There's this astounding level of details in this series. There's plenty of references that don't feel forced and are more a labor of love. Something we saw similar in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They're fairly implemented so they don't feel like an amateur's interpretation of what Sonic is. For instance, Sonic actually collects rings and they act as health for him. He can even get hit and lose them. No other animated media really did that, or the fact that there's loops in the world and Sonic actually acknowledges it. It's done in the movie, but you know, it's kind of it's there and it's nice, but here they actually make clear that it's like this is part of the world and he acknowledges it, and it's like more of a landmark of his world, which is great for the audience since that raises many geographical questions about this world that I don't think any of us need answers to. They put a lot of effort in making the game mythos work in some fashion with the story. It's not intrusive and it's truly commendable on the crew's part. Man of Action did their homework with this, and I gotta say, kudos to them for that. What gets me though is how the voice work for this series is done really well. They're all different from the game voices, but they fit like a glove. Sonic is so reminiscent of his 90s Jaleel White portrayal, even his more in-your-face attitude.
Pardon me, what do you call this place? Are you ignoring me? You're ignoring me. Why are you ignoring me?
Or on-your-face attitude in this case. There's just no pleasing you people.
What do you mean, you people?
Oh god, HR is gonna have my head. Honestly, everyone sounds so good as these characters. Tails has a bit of a deeper tone, Knuckles is definitely deeper, but it changes each dimension, which is kinda interesting and kinda works honestly. Amy is good and shows off the caring yet can be done with it type of attitude she has. Rouge comes across as less sensual, but still a nice medium that they were able to find that would be distracting as her original version, let's be honest. Shadow is brooding but not as raspy as his current voice. Eggman is menacing yet funny when he needs to be. And Big is... Big. Okay, there was no way to actually get him wrong. The actors all play these roles perfectly. Even understanding the basics about them to be able to portray them in alternate versions and giving their arcs more gravitas. You can feel the emotional side to the characters come out when it's needed. Hopefully we get more of the Prime Dimensions versions of the gang to see how they work aside from just flashbacks. Honestly, if they were able to do new voices for the characters in the mainline game, they would work perfectly. Now, this show doesn't stop at good references or good acting. The animation is top notch. There's some unique stuff they do for this series that would make you say, damn.
Budget are these guys working with?
Damn!
Yeah, it's crazy what they do here. There's stuff happening just because they wanted, and all I can do is stand. Look at this moment. There's no reason for him to do this, but it looks really cool. I love that rule of cool approach they went with for this show. The action is exactly what people would want out of a Sonic series. They go above and beyond by having unique angles during the fights. It's actually the most exciting fight sequences we've gotten in any Sonic media. The use of one-shot camera movements, to be real, set a new standard for action sequences in 3D animated shows. It's just a pure spectacle to watch. And then you couple that with the combos they do in this show. The sense of weight to the characters adds a much needed impact. Like the fight between Sonic and Shadow is honestly the best fight between them in anything. It's this insane over-the-top bout that just feels like years of build-up got let out, even though there's a new version of them that we're just getting introduced to. It just gives fans what we've all been wanting to see in a Sonic and Shadow fight for the longest. Of course, it ain't appeasing the fans that want to see a different type of bout between them. Y'all do you, but the animation goes beyond just the great action. The expressions on the characters' faces allows for some good emotional weight or good humor to shine through. The squash and stretch is always welcome in 3D animated shows, and it proves why it should be used more often. Too often are 3D animated series very stiff in their movements. I'm just ecstatic that money was put in for this series to shine on its animation. And thankfully, it's not done too much to the point that they don't feel solid. They know where the squash and stretch needs to happen and when they need to cut back on it, especially when it comes to like impacts. Not to mention the designs are pretty nice. I can tell you now, there's definitely going to be so much fan art coming for all these alternate dimension characters. It's just a law of nature, right up there with the law of gravity. Now I better see some toys on the shelves of these designs. I'm serious, the toyegeticness of these characters just oozes merch. So we better get that good stuff for sale.
We'll take 20.
But I digress. It's so nice and pleasant to look at that it definitely holds as the best looking animated Sonic series. I mean it. Nothing is really touching it in terms of animation quality, but I can't even stop there because it does stand as the best animated Sonic series so far, even though there's still more of this show on the way. It's fun to think that this is the way to end off the Sonic sweep for this year. This year for Sonic has proven why Sonic is the greatest gaming underdog of all time. All the different forms of media for him to work in, and it pays off so well. The comics gave him more in terms of his personalization. The moral conundrums he brought up in the comics got fans to actually think for a second and ponder if he's right. That's how you engage your readers. The movie set a standard for live-action game adaptations that even still there's a struggle for the industry to understand. It also gave a unique take on Sonic with him not just being a plain hero to be a hero, but more someone who actually has to grow into the role of being a hero. He had to learn a lesson that previous versions had baked into them from the start. There was something new for fans of the franchise to be surprised and interested by. It even brought back some respect to Knuckles that many of us felt he wasn't getting in the games. Granted, you also can attribute that to Idris Elba voicing him and people, thirsting really hard. And then you got Sonic Frontiers, where we're given a new framework for Sonic Team to build from and realize the full potential a good Sonic game can have. Not to mention the great character work we got with everyone learning to stand on their own without needing Sonic or choosing to go off and grow. And thankfully that new dedication paid off because it sold pretty damn well. And also there's a nice roadmap for more to come that's all free. It just makes it clear that Sonic is nowhere near done as a franchise, and Sonic Prime is a great culmination in that feeling. The series harkens back to olden days of Sonic with his too cool for school attitude, while also keeping him grounded in knowing when to take a situation seriously. They let him be flawed so he can grow rather than just being a hero who always does everything right. His friends get a great breakdown in who they are and what they bring to the table. Also adding more to the characters and letting them be different allows for fun dynamics to happen as well as humor. It's just been so long since we got a good justification for his friends to be present in a story. The subtle messaging is the strongest since SatAM. Animation wise, it's a pure chef's kiss that felt like it had something to prove with all the great action and expressions on the characters. It all feels like a labor of love in the end that still has more to offer since there's more on the way. Hopefully more unique alternate versions of the game, more unique worlds to explore, character arcs for Rouge and Shadow possibly. It just feels so great to be a Sonic fan and actually be excited for Sonic again. We've been hurting for a minute, but now we have so much to look forward to for the future of this blue speedster. But what did you all think of this year in Sonic content? Were you happy with everything we were given? Let me know in the comments, and always remember, it's just a thought.